gathered to honour a man who has been described by President Cyril Ramaphosa as an early architect of government's anti-corruption architecture. Heath has been lauded for his groundbreaking judgments, relentless pursuit of ensuring that everybody has access to justice, and his commitment to fairness and equality. The former state advocate, prosecutor and judge headed up the Heath Commission of Inquiry to probe government corruption in the Eastern Cape and was later appointed by President Nelson Mandela as the inaugural head of the Special Investigating Unit.
He was a remarkable person, and I think it is very important to remember his legacy. The SIU of today, 735 people, leading anti-corruption agency in the country, was his legacy. He built it from scratch. The whole concept of using civil law in the fight against corruption and maladministration came from him, and that is very much at the heart of the work that the SIU does. So he is indeed a remarkable person, and it was also interesting listening to my colleague Keith Mathieu telling us specific stories about the impact of various of his judgments.
Heath's finding that rape can take place within a marriage has been described as one of his many profound, radical and trailblazing judgments.
Way before anyone else was saying that husbands can rape their wives, he found it. And he was a couple of years ahead of anyone else on that. Also legal representation, that you couldn't get a fair trial, a criminal trial, unless you were legally represented. He was way ahead of his time on that. And then in his early judgments on how to approach a Bill of Rights, which was 4 years or so before the present Constitutional Court, he wrote judgments setting out how you approach interpreting and applying a Bill of Rights. And sadly, judges subsequent to him wrote judgments using his thinking, his judgments, and never acknowledged it. So he was a good 4 or 5 years ahead of his time in that regard as well, how you approach a Bill of Rights.
Heath's families described him as a man of great compassion.
Willem would have been greatly humbled by the public recognition of his career since his passing. Again, however, he was not a man who sought or expected recognition. Contrary to how he may have been perceived in the public domain, he was a humble man, actually quite introverted, and with great capacity for compassion. After his resignation as a judge in 2001, I had the privilege of working with him for 22 years. During those 22 years, he shared with me, not only in words, but in his actions, his great affection for his great affection for our country and our Constitution.
Those who knew the People's Judge says his quiet wisdom and a deep sense of right and wrong will remain etched in the memories of him. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.